to stand in support and commend this bill to the House. Thank you.
Mr Speaker.
Iain Lees-Galloway.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. As my colleague, definitely not Rod Stewart. As my colleague Sue Moroney has said, we support the bill overall, but we do have some reservations about it. And we support the bill because the fact is ride-sharing technology, apps like Uber's not the only one, but it's the one that's most prevalent worldwide and certainly most prevalent in New Zealand. It's the one that we hear from most often. That technology is here and it has a lot of benefits. The challenge for us is not to deregulate in response to it, but to make sure that we have appropriate regulation that allows the benefits of ride-sharing and the benefits of the mobile technology that goes with it, that enables it, to be most effective, whilst still ensuring that drivers and their passengers are as safe as they can possibly be. And there is a balancing act there, and especially when you're dealing with new technology and fast-changing technology, it can be a real challenge for us to land in the right place. And you've got, on the one hand, you've got the taxi drivers with their very valid concerns. On the other hand, you've got the likes of Uber wanting, I think, legitimately to be able to conduct their business and to provide a new service without being tied up in unnecessary regulation. But to be fair, perhaps overlooking some of the things that we need to do to make sure that we keep public safety as much of a priority as it needs to be. And I think we need go no further than the example of the Uber driver who, at the end of their shift, having worked a shift in Auckland, picked up some passengers from Auckland and drove them nearly non-stop to Wellington. And that was a breach of the work time requirements. The driver, I know the NZTA is investigating this, but the driver claimed that he took breaks, the necessary breaks. But what is for certain is that he worked a total of 16 and a half hours, when the rule is you only work a total of 13 hours before you have a proper break. And because of the way the technology is set up and because of the difficulties that we have in enforcing the rules when dealing with an outfit like Uber, that would never have been detected had it not been for the unfortunate circumstance for the driver that the passengers were so happy that they went to the media about it. And he was hailed as a hero. He was hailed as a hero. It was really obvious from the outset that it was likely that rules had been broken, that he had put himself at risk, that he had put his passengers at risk, and he'd put all the other drivers who he came across on that journey from Auckland to Wellington at risk. And yet the initial story was, what a hero. Well, that tells us something about our culture towards safety in the workplace and safety amongst people who drive for a living, and it tells us that there's something wrong and we need to make sure we get our regulations right. Now, one thing that this bill does away with, and we've decided not to challenge it, but one thing that this bill does away with is any signage on the vehicle, because the Uber drivers make the case that it is their own personal vehicle, they use it for personal use, and they don't want to go around with Uber signage all over their car all the time. The truth is, the first Uber I ever took, when we went to put our bags in the back, in the boot, there were all the taxi signs that had been pulled off, and so now it was a blank white vehicle that we were getting into, but actually it was a taxi. They'd just taken all the magnetic strips off the car, put them in the boot, and all of a sudden it was an Uber. Well, why can't they just, if they take the taxi ones off, pop an Uber one back on there, and hey, we know it's an Uber. And people who are tasked with enforcing these rules have one more thing that alerts them to the fact that this is actually a vehicle which is being used in a commercial way and needs to adhere to the commercial rules. Now, yep, they've got a little certificate on their windscreen that if you go around with a magnifying glass and you're Inspector Clouseau and you get up real close and you can and you check to see if that's all correct, you'll know that that's an Uber, but otherwise, just driving down the street, you'd have no idea that that was a commercial vehicle. And personally, we're not challenging it, but personally I think that is a bit of a flaw. Even though I understand they're not rank and hail, they're not going to be pulling up and sitting at taxi ranks waiting for people to get in. They are using their own cars. They get called up by the app. I get all of that. But from an enforcement perspective, I think it would be useful to have that on there. And that's ultimately, I think, where the challenge is going to lie. Not so much in the regulations themselves, but how we enforce this. And we should make it as easy as possible for enforcement to occur. And by the very nature of this business, it is going to be harder and harder for us to ensure that drivers are sticking to the rules, that the passengers are safe. I understand the whole thing about how the app works, and you know who the driver is and you know who the passenger is, and everybody rates each other, and you know, if a passenger does something untoward in the vehicle, then that driver will put that on their rating, and future drivers will know that or not. And if the driver acts in an inappropriate way, like another time I took an Uber and the driver took a phone call, you know, on the phone, not hands-free, whilst they were driving the car, I was able to report that through the app. I get all of that. But it does make enforcement of the rules an awful lot harder, and just being able to see who they are would help. The other thing that I think is incredibly important is those cameras in the car. It was only a few years ago that the government thought this was so important that taxis had cameras in the vehicle that they made it mandatory. Whether the drivers wanted that expense or not, the government made it mandatory. Okay, technology has changed. We now have the ride-sharing app. Maybe we need, you know, that gives us an opportunity to pause and ask the question, are the cameras still important? I think they are. Regardless of what information you can share on an app, whether you are or are not Rod Stewart, certainly, I mean, if a driver can use a pseudonym, then a passenger can certainly use a pseudonym, and then, you know, maybe attack the driver or whatever. Having the camera in the vehicle just provides that extra level of safety, actually provides safety for the passenger as well. That was the argument that was made when the government made this mandatory. Why not carry on with that argument? Those cameras are, there is an expense attached to them, but it is coming down all the time. I think the fact that the government made them mandatory meant that, you know, there was plenty of demand there for them in New Zealand, and the cost of them has come down. If someone wants to use their vehicle, whether it's full-time or not, as an Uber, then installing a camera for their own safety and for the safety of their passengers, I think, is not a particularly onerous requirement. So, you know, we will certainly be supporting Sue Moroney's amendments at the committee stage around that. But sir, I just want to say one last thing, and that is around the behaviour of Uber. They have lobbied for these changes. That's perfectly legitimate. Everybody has the right to come to Parliament, come to the government and say, we don't think the rules as they are appropriate for the modern environment. Let's make some changes. But what Uber have done in their arrogance is to flout the rules as they currently are and just act as though the rules were what they want them to be. And this is the way they've operated all around the world. And frankly, the response from the government has been weak. Extremely weak. The approach this government takes to actually enforcing the rules in so many different areas suggests that they don't actually think that there should be rules. The enforcement of requiring Uber drivers to have their P endorsement, the enforcement of requiring them to have their vehicles properly certificated, has been extremely lax. And I think, you know, the government actually, this is a government that tells New Zealanders that it believes in the rule of law, that people should abide by the law and there will be consequences for breaking the law. But in the case of Uber, they've sort of just gone, oh well, shrug their shoulders, nothing we can do about it, it's a very difficult area to enforce, oh, let's just let Uber act in the way they want to, and hey, we're going to change the law eventually in their favour, so why worry about it? Well, why worry about it? Because there are other perfectly legitimate operators out there, taxi drivers, who have abided by the law, and I can understand why they are aggrieved by the way this government has approached this legislation. So we support it, but it sure ain't perfect.
Pamjit Pama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.